यत्रैव मनोमदीयं तत्रैव तव स्वरूपम्।
यं शैवाः समुपासते शिव इति ब्रह्मेति वेदान्तिनो बौद्धा बुद्ध इति प्रमाणपटवः कर्तेति नैयायिका अर्हन्नित्यथ जैनशासनरताः कर्मेति मीमांसकाः सोऽयं वो विदधातु वाञ्छितफलं त्रैलोक्यनाथो हरिः सोऽयं वो विदधातु वाञ्छितफलं त्रैलोक्यनाथो हरिः मदीयहृदयाकाशे सदानन्दमयो गुरुः उदेतु सततं सम्यक् अज्ञानतिमिरारुणः उदेतु सततं सम्यक् अज्ञानतिमिरारुणः। हरि हरि हरि. Shall we have 3 times Omkara recitation? Will you recite along with me? This is actually a sadhana for all of you, a very progressive sadhana. I would like every one of you to keep in mind, this chorus recitation is supposed to permeate the whole globe and delivering its benedictory notes for all the creatures in the world. This kind of an expansion is very, very important. I chant it primarily for that. It will also make you attuned to the discussion. The discussion is going to be, what shall I say? It is a spiritual panacea. If you are able to listen to it well with the necessary attunement, I think it is going to be something very wonderful. When I say this, I am having the greatness and the profundity of the conversation and the text we have before us. Somebody has written to me an email in which he said, Swamiji, I would like you to write on Ashtavakra Samhita, something I had not thought of. However, after getting the letter or getting the email, a few days passed and this talk also was forthcoming. I have already started writing on the Ashtavakra Samhita. I have completed the first chapter. I propose to write it whenever I get time. I cannot say when it would be completed, but I have started writing. It is a text which has to be properly exposed, and it should also become more popular and widely available to people. I don't know whether it is so now. So we shall have the chorus recitation. Let it purify all of you. Let it spiritualize, divinize and devotionalize you, generating the necessary attunement, absorption and contemplation, meditation. Harihi, Harihi. Jai Guru. I would like you to think a little about this Ashtavakra Samhita. During the earlier talk series which I presented, I was mentioning about one important factor. We have two personalities in our country. They are the cultural stalwarts for all of us. If these two personalities are removed from our culture, nothing else will be there. One is Rama, another is Krishna. I also said that Rama is considered to be a Maryada Purushottama. All the Maryadas, ethical and moral disciplines, values and standards, you will find embodied in Sri Rama. He is the right human. That is why Mahatma Gandhi particularly mentioned that we must try to have our Rama Rajya. Rama was a ruler sitting on the throne. It is Valmiki who has written about Sri Rama. And I always say that the great Valmiki has mentioned, he has presented before us only the prince and the king Rama, nobody else. He has described him as a prince, he has also described him as a king. So you can imagine the prince and the king, both of them are very much human. It is under their rule that all of us remain. When the king becomes old, he selects somebody, generally the eldest son, and makes him the Yuvaraja. He starts ruling. Finally, the whole kingdom is entrusted to him and he becomes the monarch. So whatever you find in Rama is humanhood in all its propriety, best and beauty. So every bit of Rama's life pictured by Valmiki Maharshi can be incorporated, embodied and pursued by us. This is what Valmiki wants. He wants every one of us to install Sri Rama in ourselves. About Krishna, it is different and I don't speak about him now. I mention about Sri Rama to tell you that any reference to Sri Rama is a reference to Treta Yuga. We are now in Kali Yuga. Twice Kali Yuga is Dwapara Yuga. Thrice Kali Yuga is Treta Yuga. The world has been slipping from Krita Yuga to Treta Yuga, from there to Dwapara and then finally to Kali. But we have come from there. So if you ask us, what is our origin? Our origin is Treta Yuga. Whatever Rama was and Rama did, the same thing we can restore because it is our legacy. It is our inheritance. It is our birthright. We don't have to look elsewhere to become good or a model. The model is already there and he was a predecessor of ours. He is a predecessor of everybody in India now. Not only Hindus. In one sense, we only have Hindus because all of us are living and belonging to Hindustan. So the other people also, if you take their earlier generations, you will find all of us will go to the same Rama, Dasharatha, Krishna and the others. Because all of them are very, very prehistoric. And the so-called religious divisions came very recently. In the long reckoning of a country or a subcontinent like ours, what is 1,000 years? Nothing. 1,000 or 10,000 years are nothing for us. Because we have lived so long. Now, about Sri Rama, I was already mentioning, I took Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana for 3 days. Because in Kerala, this is considered to be a Ramayana month. It was then that I was describing about Rama and Krishna. Whatever Krishna tells you to do, you do. Don't copy him. But whatever Rama did, copy it. This is our proverbial statement. Don't try to copy Krishna, because he had a lot of transcendental elements in him. You may not be able to do it. Krishna was a Kshatriya, but he never ruled any kingdom. He was not a king at all. He made his own palace in Dwaraka in the midst of the ocean, and he lived there. But he did more than what a king would do. Many, many kings could do. So these two personalities are very important. Now today, I am going to discuss the conversation, the dialogue between King Janaka and sage Ashtavakra. King Janaka was the father-in-law of Sri Rama. That is what I want you to understand. The dialogue between sage Vasishtha and Sri Rama when Rama was 16 years old, imagine how great and profound the dialogue is. Now I am going to discuss a dialogue which transpired between the elderly Janaka and the Maharshi Ashtavakra. Understand the connection. So as Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana is, in a way, it is more precise and it is more profound and direct. And there is a suddenness and an instantness about it. As I discuss, you will know about it. So this kind of a connection, Janaka was considered to be a great knower. Even Vedavyasa sent his son to learn from Janaka. When Vyasadeva told him all about spirituality, he replied saying that, "My dear father, I know all this." A son who replies in this manner, how can the father teach him at all? So he found the best way will be to send him to the mature and renowned Janaka Maharshi, Janaka Raja. So he went there. You know what Janaka did? He never took notice of him. He was told that Shugamuni had come to see him. So he said, okay. So he kept him 14 days outside the palace. Another 14 days inside the palace. Another 14 days in the harem serving the people there. And after that he called him. And what he said is, "My dear Shuka, you are a born knower. You know all about the spiritual wisdom yourselves by your very birth from the birth. When the same knowledge was taught you by your father, you said, I already know it. So it is not that you don't know the knowledge, but you have never actualized the knowledge, which means some discipline, some orderliness, some refinement, which we call austerity. That austere confirmation of whatever you know, that has not taken place. That is why I asked you to stay outside the palace, inside the palace, in the harem, and finally I have called you. So what you already know, what your father taught you, the same wisdom I am going to relate to you again, and you will be able to understand it, because you have undergone a very intense level of austerity, though for a short period. Can you imagine? Vedavyasa himself sending his son to get enlightened to a person like King Janaka. So what should be the pedestal of Janaka Maharaja? About him there is a statement which is very current in spiritual circles, enlightened circles. Janaka said, when the whole Mithila is burned, I lose nothing. My dear souls, are you with me? This is India. India is not going to be moved by petty things at all. We are a nation which has got the spiritual intrinsic power to survive any kind of a bodily, mental, intellectual and ego assault. Fear is unknown to us. What will happen? Living people will die and maybe dead people will be born. All people in this world were born ultimately only to die. And still the world is living. The Panchabhutas are continuing. Our body is exactly the same as it was in the most ancient human. So what is it that we are enamored of, afraid of? We have got the strength of wisdom. We have got the depth of wisdom, the loftiness and exaltedness of wisdom, before which everything becomes a trifle. This is the culture we have, and we have inherited this culture. It cannot be had from textual education at all or from academic centers. It has to come in the form of an inheritance, an imbibing in the hands of a teacher. That is what Shugamuni did. His knowledge was not sufficient. He had to have an austere sublimation and enrichment for his knowledge. Krishna went to the Himalayas and performed austerities before Pradyumna was born to him. Can you imagine? He did prolonged austerities in Himalayas. Because if you want to give birth to a child, you get married today, within a month or so the wife becomes pregnant. This is most ordinary. Now what will take place even with animals? But have you planned for a child? Have you made austere preparation for a child? What kind of a child do you want? Do you want him to have the inner metal, the inner exaltedness? Then induce it into the child. Prepare for it. So Krishna went and did austerities. We are all told, undertake a pilgrimage. Go to as many holy places as possible before you have a child from your own body, your own mind. So the child should be a mind child, an intelligence child, a heart child, a spiritual child. Spiritual child means mento-intellectual qualities and excellences the child must have. The entire spirituality is a mento-intellectual pursuit. It aims at only enriching, empowering, edifying, elevating, enlightening the mind and the intelligence. It makes you a more efficient person with a lot of insight for you. It doesn't try to ornament or enrich the body. The body grows by food and nourishment, and exercises are a necessary corollary. But so far as the mind is concerned, the mind has to be nourished by mental qualities and enrichment. The intelligence also has to be treated with intelligential qualities. And spirituality aims at only providing you, enriching you and empowering you with mento-intellectual qualities and excellences. Take any page of Bhagavad Gita. You will find how to ornament your mind, how to deck your mind. This is what is mentioned. You will find how it works here also. Very briefly it is put. So when I am entering into a discussion between King Janaka and sage Ashtavakra, you should understand how you will rate it. What kind of a dialogue was it? And it took place in the palace of Mithila. And our Sita, whom Sri Rama married, the foster daughter of King Janaka. What do you think of Janaki? How did she have all the qualities she had? She has imbibed it from Janaka. Something very important, very, very important. So that kind of a dialogue we are going to discuss. Now to come to the dialogue, how did this happen? It did not simply transpire out of an accident. So though there was a chance developed. Those were days kings were ruling with a lot of ethics, with a lot of morality. They used to hold saints and sages, ascetic people, in great esteem. Whenever something unusual is to be done, then only the ascetics generally visit the king or go to the palace to express what they want. Like Vishwamitra went to Ayodhya to take Sri Rama and Lakshmana along with him, so that the obstacles that were expected for his yaga could be dealt with. Otherwise, why should Vishwamitra go? They are living in the forest, they have nothing to do with the king, but the king has everything to do with them, so he comes and prostrates before them, seeks whatever he wants. The Maharshis seldom have anything from the king, so very rarely they visit the palace. But whoever came, the palace doors were open. And the king was always very humble, very obedient to welcome them and fulfill their wishes, take his blessings. So, sage Ashtavakra was there. Why is he called Ashtavakra? Vakrata means bend in the body, any kind of a curve. So he had Ashta means 8. So he had a person who had 8 curves or bends in the body. Can you imagine how he will look and how he will walk? I don't think we have seen anybody like that. 8 bends in the body. So he decided to go to Mithila palace. So he went in. That was the time a full assembly of King Janaka was going on. He had very good scholars and advisors in his assembly. King Janaka himself was a greatly wise and illumined person. And he was taking advice from a set of scholars and advisors to conduct his rule. So you can imagine, depending upon his own greatness, what should be the greaterness of the scholars and advisors. When sage Ashtavakra entered the assembly, and the assembly was in full session, seeing the sage come unannounced and seeing his gait, all the members of the assembly burst into laughter. And you can imagine what kind of a laughter is it. It was not in appreciation. If at all, there was a derisional note in their laughter. When the whole assembly burst into laughter, sage Ashtavakra also burst into laughter. And King Janaka was seeing it from his center seat. He was taken aback. He could understand his scholars bursting into laughter. They could not control. But he could not understand why Ashtavakra sage also burst into laughter. So he got up from his seat, welcomed the sage and asked him, I have a humble question, please answer me. Why? I can understand my assembly bursting into laughter. But why is it that you also laughed? So he again laughed and said, you know why I laughed? You are a renowned king, very much known for your self-knowledge also. And you have an assembly of this type. Generally, the assembly is to be adorned by the best people who have a lot of wisdom, everything. So all the people here are superbly wise. Now I have come here. I have a body which I have not made. My mother delivered. Everybody has a similar body. He is delivered by the mother. Nobody can claim for the beauty or ugliness of one's own body. This the assembly should normally know. Ordinary people will know how mature and sober these people are. So when I came in such a manner and my 8 bends demonstrated themselves in my gait, how is it that they burst into laughter? Is the great King Janaka seeking advice and ruling the kingdom? Getting advice from such a bundle of scholars who are really stupid? So I could not understand. I could not match your wisdom with their behavior. That is why I laughed. What more is required for humbling a king, humbling the assembly, and humbling the whole world? Janaka instantly fell at the feet of Ashtavakra Maharshi, and then he understood. Whatever I want to know in the area of spirituality, this is the Maharshi, this is the person from whom I can get it. So straight away they entered into a discussion. And the discussion is very brief and very pointed, brief, straight, knocking and hitting at the center right from the beginning. So the question he raised was, Katham jnanamavapnodi, Katham muktir bhavishyati, vairagyam cha katham praptam, edad bruhi mama prabho. Katham jnanamavapnodi, katham muktir bhavishyati, vairagyam cha katham praptam, edad bruhi mama prabho. My dear Lord, I have 3 questions to set before you. Katham, how? Jnanam, knowledge. Avapnodi, one gets. How can knowledge be acquired? Katham muktir bhavishyati. We know what is meant by liberation. Everybody speaks about it. This mukti is a result or an outcome of something. So how does this mukti result? If it will result only from wisdom, what is that wisdom? Our tradition and Shastras say that liberation is an outcome which follows knowledge. It is an outcome of spiritual wisdom. Vairagyam cha katham praptam. In order to have this knowledge and liberation, one must have dispassion, not passion. Passion leads to the world. Dispassion leads to liberation. So this dispassion in ample measure, how to gain it, how to inculcate it, how to cultivate it, how to master it. I want to know these 3. This is the beginning of Ashtavakra Samhita. Katham jnanam avapnodi, katham muktir bhavishyati, vairagyam cha katham praptam, etad bruhi mama prabho. My dear viewers, I have to tell you, to listen to Ashtavakra Samhita, you have to shed all your inhibitions. Blow away your fears. Throw away your anxiety. Keep away your ego. Can you have an open mind? Whatever is the truth, that truth will be delivered. And you must have the receptiveness to accept it and actualize it. Never stand by any tradition. Never stand by any hearsay. Never stand by any pet notion that you have. Simply listen to it, absorb it, meditate upon it, actualize and realize it in your own heart. Everybody will agree that God is all-pervading. If the all-pervading God or God is all-pervading, tell me, like an innocent child, where can you spot Him easiest and the best? Is it a millimeter away from the body, or a kilometer away from your house, or the best place to realize Him is in your own heart within? Your mind is closer to you than the body. The intelligence is still closer. The ego is still closer. And the closest is the I, the self. This is what you have to understand. So don't shift your attention. Don't get distracted. Listen to what is said. 3 questions are said. How can jnana be attained? When and how will mukti result? And how to strengthen the whole process by the necessary measure of dispassion. Ashtavakra is going to answer him. And the first answer is, he has made briefly a beautiful statement, the greatest inquiry in spirituality. Greatest inquiry. Mukti michhasi chet tada vishayan vishavatyaja kshamarjavadaya tosha satyam piyushavadbhaja. All the questions have to be answered. So he says, Mukti michhasi chet tada vishayan vishavatyaja. Mukti michhasi chet tada. My dear son, if you are aspiring to achieve liberation, gain liberation, vishayan vishavatyaja. Abandon the entire world objects as if they are poisonous. Are you afraid? Are you afraid? This is a session for knowledge. And knowledge is based upon reason. So whatever is pointed to you properly, any finding that we make, if it is according to the rigid standards of reason and logic and propriety, you have to accept it. Whether you like it or dislike it, that question doesn't come. Why these are to be considered poisonous? Because everything in this world, including the world, is transitory. Transitory means fleeting. They go on changing. If you have a changing body, and with the body you are going to court changeable objects, the changingness and changeability will go on multiplying. You are not going to get anything lasting, not to speak of eternality, at least lasting for a long time. What is your lifespan? 80, 90, 100 years. After that what? Every one of us is finally ending with termination of the very body. So everything in this world is fleeting. From fleeting objects and their association, you will never be able to get anything permanent, lasting. Because everything is changeful and the body is also changeful, the changefulness will go on increasing and intensifying itself. Therefore, don't run after them. Objects are outside your body. No object, when acquired, is going to enter your inside and give you joy, comfort, or delight. The car you have bought will remain in the garage. It will never enter your heart. The children born to you will be living outside, separate from the body. Till birth, at least, the child was connected inside the womb with the mother. The moment the child is born, the umbilical cord is cut and the child is separate. No object from the outside world, is going to enter either through the eye or through the ear or through the nose and touch the mind. The mind feels that I have got this object. It is that feeling that gives you delight. So tell me, what is the source of delight? The object or the mind inside the body. The desire or aspiration is generated by the mind, and the mind pursues it through the senses, and the object is acquired, it remains outside. The mind feels that I have got this object. I have gained my object of desire, is what the mind thinks. Previously it was thinking, I want to have an object. Now I have got the object. So the fulfillment comes to you by virtue of the mind alone. The desire was in your mind, the pursuit was by the mind, and the fulfillment is in the mind. Where are the objects coming here? Can you answer me? In the mind process, what happens? When a desire is fulfilled, that desire becomes extinct. To make a desire extinct, you are pursuing it hard. You pursue a desire maybe for 10 years. After that you fulfill it. Then what happens? In the mind level, the desire becomes extinct. So any fulfillment of a desire means extinction of desire. And to make the desire extinct, you require all this objective confusion. What is this? Are we not intelligent? Can we not work better? Can we not assess our life in a better manner? So in order to have the joy of liberation, the fulfillment of liberation, in order to gain the knowledge of the subject as different from the object, my dear Janaka, you have to be dispassionate. You asked me how dispassion can be cultivated. Dispassion can be cultivated by understanding the futility of the objects in the world. Futility. No object ever can enter your inside. They will remain outside. The mind has its own principle and process of association. The mind feels that I have this, therefore that I have feeling gives you joy. I have is not an object, it is a feeling, it is a notion. So mind thrives on notions and mind gets delight by its notions. The whole process of delight seeking is mental inside, mental inside, mental inside. And inside the body there cannot be another object. What is this mind? Mind is not part of the body. It is associated with the body. The mind is an altogether different substance. Body is matter and energy, matter and energy. Mind is neither matter nor energy. Mind has got feelings, emotions, thoughts, memories, reason, so many things. Neither matter nor energy can produce this. So understand the mind in its own manner and deal with the mind, focus on the mind and try to make it generate constant delight for you. The delight, its source is the mind, and the mind is inside your body. Keeping the source of delight, you look for delight from the objects. Is there any greater foolishness than this? Janaka, you have to mend your thoughts. Mukti michyasi chet tata vishayan vishavatyaja kshama arjava daya atosha satyam piyushavad bhaja. If the objects are considered poisonous, then what can be nectar? Yes, I will tell you what is nectar. The joy is sought by the mind, pursued by the mind, and experienced by the mind. So I will tell you what is nectar. All the items that I am going to say, they are mind related. Kshama, patience and tolerance, that will give you the joy of liberation. Patience and tolerance. Arjava, straightforwardness. You cannot carry duplicity with you. Any sense of deception, even in the matter of dealing with your own relatives in the house, the deception should not be there. Think of Kaiyeyi, how much deceptive she was. Because of her untimely demand, her own husband was rolling on the ground. Who made him so? Kaiyeyi. Was she deceptive, virtuous, or straightforward, you tell me? So this lack of straightforwardness spoils the atmosphere of the house. Whether it is with the wife or the husband, children, parents, brothers, sisters and brothers-in-law, everywhere, try to become straightforward. This is the challenge before man. Be straightforward like a stick with no bends, dry piece of stick. Straightforwardness. When I first read it, I was in Calcutta in my pre-sannyasa days. I was wondering, why is it this straightforwardness is mentioned there? After all, this is for liberation, such a great lofty state. And there he has listed this simple virtue called straightforwardness. I started wondering. And I could understand it is not such a common virtue. It's a very rare virtue. Now, in the people who are listening to me, viewing me, I don't know how many are straightforward. If you are all honest, you should tell me in one way or the other, I am straightforward or I am not. Then I can understand. I think straightforwardness is to be cultivated by understanding the priceless nature of the virtue, by understanding how much it is related to the pinnacle of human life, fulfillment, liberation, freedom. You go and talk to a Gurudev. How will you talk? You will talk straight from your heart with no inhibition whatsoever. Confess before him whatever you have to say. Have no inhibition. If I tell everything, will he not understand me? Yes, he should understand. So that innocence, that childlike balya, that childlike innocence, very few people have. So straightforwardness is very important. Kshama, arjava, daya, tosha, satyam. Daya, compassion, kindness, kindness. All of you are family people. And everybody will say, I look after my family well. For the sake of the family, I have done everything. For whose sake you will do, except for the family? So in a mother looking after the child, there is nothing great. It's very common. Even animals and birds do it. If you do well, look after your family, in a good language, in a good assessment, this is the minimum a human can do. In doing this, there is nothing special or worthy of reporting also. When you have compassion for children not born to you, the children of others, if you start feeling the same fondness as for your children, then I can say you are becoming a human. So compassion is something very important. When you have compassion for the others, do you think others are benefited or you are benefited? Others are objects for your compassion. Actually, who is benefited and who is having this compassion? The subject part of your own personality, the mind, intelligence and heart. They are the ones to be benefited by it. Suppose you give anything, gift something to a man who needs. Physically you give it, he possesses it, but mentally you get it. You are enriched by the act of giving. You are enriched by the fondness and compassion that you have for you. Imagine, my dear souls, anybody who is compassionate and kind. A selfish man is never liked and honored by anybody in this world, including his own family. A wife will like to have a husband who is very selfless. In the same manner, a husband would like to have a wife who is selfless. If selfishness is the least there, biting their mind and heart, nobody would like. So compassion is a definite virtue that every one of us should cultivate if you don't have. If you have it, increase the measure, increase the depth. Kshamarjava daya, tosha. Tosha means contentment. Contentment is not born of money, born of education, born of recognition, born of public recognition, nothing. Santosha, it is an expression of the mind when it is in a state of fullness. I always tell people, you have teeth and lips, why don't you smile and laugh very well? Everybody has got lips, teeth also, but they will never smile. Uddhava, standing in front of Krishna, had a conversation just like Arjuna had with Krishna. Krishna had given two dialogues. One is the Warfield dialogue, another is the Dwaraka dialogue. The Dwaraka dialogue was the last message of Krishna, and it was addressing Uddhava by the side. Nobody was there, no Sanjaya was there to report. Still we have a report of him. Uddhava asked, what is the greatest wealth in human life? Krishna smiled and said, contentment is the greatest wealth. My dear souls, this is India. This is India, not the one that you are thinking about. As long as we have this great inner virtue called contentment, we will not suffer in this world. We will not suffer. Understand that joy is an emotion. As an emotion, it belongs to the mind. All emotions belong to the mind. So in order to have joy, where will you look to? Will you look to the objects of the world, which are evanescent? Or will you look into the source, your own within the mind? So contentment is the greatest wealth, he said. Satyam, truthfulness. We have accepted Satyameva Jayate when we became independent. So when we became independent, at that time, after a lot of deliberations, we chose Satyameva Jayate. Satyameva Jayate. It is from Mundaka Upanishad. There was a lot of debate, if I remember properly, as to whether it should be Jayate or Jayati. Jayate is a special archaic usage found in the Upanishads. Normally it is a Parasmai Pada. So it should be Jayati. They said, let us accept whatever is there. At least that good sense our people had. Accept whatever is there. Traditionally, our people were wise. They had excelled in Sanskrit. In spite of it, they have used. Normally, all the verbs are supposed to be all the three. But some are, even now, this and that. So, Satyameva Jayate, that's Satya, truthfulness. Truthfulness. When I ask you, what is your name? How many answers do you have? What is your father's name? Have you had your meal? Where are you going? Why have you come? All these questions when I ask you, how can there be two answers? The whole world is driven by Satya. Maybe people are mischievous, people are untruthful, but don't think that truthfulness is becoming extinct from this world. I always say, you go to a shop or even to the railway station, you want to purchase a ticket, give them a 500 rupee note and the ticket is costing 350. He takes 350 and gives you back 150. Tell me, what flourished there? Truth or untruth? And the ticket it is written, it is meant for journey. And on such and such a day, that particular day you come with the ticket and the seat will be reserved in your name. Tell me, truth administers this or untruth? I want to have an answer. So throw away your ideas of untruthfulness and truthfulness. Install the right idea. The entire world is governed by truthfulness. Earth is revolving in its own axis. It is going around the sun. Can you tell me the age of the earth, when it started revolving? Up to now it is retaining its own position. The time required is the same. There is no change. Has the earth misbehaved at any point of time? Whenever we have some balancing measures in the earth, we say, the fury of the earth, fury of nature, etc. It's all wrong. Nature will never get furious towards us. It has to balance. The earth is a small portion. The seas are very huge. And the air is connected everywhere, everywhere. What all pressures are there? How much of balancing is required? So when the earth does all this balancing, sometimes it is very huge and it becomes difficult. You should understand that it can only be like this. Wisdom lies in understanding matters. Nature will never become harsh to us. Suppose she is going to be harsh, the last remedy is close your eyes, sit and pray. My dear nature, my dear nature, my dear nature. We cannot tolerate, become calm, you say. But nobody will take to such a proposition. I shall tell you a story. Would you like to hear? There was a saint in the Himalayas. He was a rationalist. He will never say God. Anybody who believes in God and comes for a discussion, he will always defeat him by his rational arguments. So there was another boy, the son of another sage. His father and this rational sage were friends, so he knew him right from the beginning. He somehow felt this sage, I would like to take him to the higher mountains where there will be snowing frequently. So one day, he arranged matters in such a manner that this particular saint and this youngster, both of them together went with a tent. They climbed up. And as planned, it started snowing. So they put up their tent by hammering here, there, etc. And both of them got in. It went on snowing. The youngster said, the snowing can be very serious, sometimes it will be long. So let us pray to God. Otherwise we will be covered by snow. The tents were put with a little gap, and the gap will be about 2 inches or 1.5 inches. So they found the snow was building. Then he said, you are trying to catch me on a weak point. Don't tell me. There is no God and we will not pray. We will not pray. There is no God also. So he went on, the snowing continued. And it was coming up. After some time the gap will be sealed and they will be blocked there. So he said, unless you agree and let us pray, it will not stop. Finally the old man agreed. Elderly person. He also joined and both of them prayed. The snow stopped and they escaped. From then on, he has never opened his mouth for anybody. Whether it is corona or whether it is this or that, when all of us join together, we are children of the earth, children of nature. As our mother will respond, nature also will respond. During the floods in Kerala, there is a temple not very far away from the ashram. That temple is located on the bank of a river, and the river was in spate. So all the people, religious devotees, collected themselves, sat there and started praying. It was never affected. Never affected. The temple was safe. See, we have the privilege. We have the right to be protected. If it is human protection, you can seek human agencies for it. So if it is for protection from wild nature, we have to pray. It is not prayer. I don't call it a prayer. You should exercise your wish and will. I always ask the question, why are we living? Who made our body? Who made our mind? That humanity should exist upon the earth, is it a wish of an individual or a family? Or it has been planned for by Mother Nature herself? Mother Nature herself? So she will have to make proper situations so that life will thrive here. It is for man's intelligence to understand this primary and fundamental factor. So when all of us join together, clouds will go away. They will simply exempt us. Similarly, you can have rains also. There were so many instances where rains have been produced. In South Indian Carnatic music, there is a particular raga called Amrita Varshini Raga. If you start singing the raga pretty well and properly, rains will start falling. Similarly, there is another raga, if I remember correct, it is Agari. Then one will not get food in the morning. That will also happen. So let us understand very clearly, Satya, truthfulness, that is the way of life. The entire world is woven around truthfulness. There is no place for untruthfulness at all here. That is why all these mischievous transactions are coming into life. We must have proper systems and procedures instituted in our administration and management circles so that any kind of a wrong transaction can be controlled of. The human should not relax his efforts. Muktimicchasi chet tata vishayan vishavatyaja kshamarjavadayatosha satyam piyushavad bhaja. My dear son, if you are desirous of mukti, liberation, you should evaluate that the objects in this world are fleeting. The more and more you enjoy with your senses, the brilliance of the senses is corroded. As Nachiketas put it before Yamadharmaraja. Yamadharmaraja offered him quite a number of bounties. I will give you damsels, musical instruments, as much territory as you want to rule. Everything will be there. They will sing, dance, music, everything. He said, no, all these are fleeting, fleeting, fleeting. The more and more I enjoy, sarvendriyanam jarayanti tejaha. The brilliance of the senses is getting corroded. What happens to the teeth? They fall. What happens to the eyes? They lose their vision. Your vision becomes less. Everywhere you meet. The more and more you enjoy, the senses are corroded. Sarvendriyanam jarayanti tejaha abhisarvam jividamalpameva tavaivavaha stavanritya gide. Let all the singing, dancing, etc. be in your own safe custody. This young Nachiketas doesn't want them, my dear Yama. That boy said, this is India, my dear souls. Understand it. This is India. We are not going to be enamored by riches. We are not going to be enamored by whatever external bounties are there for nature to provide. By comparison, they are cheaper. They are cheaper. By comparison, they are poisonous. Poisonous. The sweet and the nectarine are inside the body, not outside. We are seekers of our own inner glory. Inner glory. Not external riches. Let us understand it very clearly. Kshama arjava daya tosha satyam piyushavad bhaja. Patience and tolerance, straightforwardness, compassion, contentment and truthfulness, consider them to be nectarine, and worship them. My dear souls, what I have to tell you today now from here is worship inner virtues and ornaments. Worship qualities. Seek a qualitative life, ennobling life, enriching life, elevating life. Seek promotion in the hands of your own mind, intelligence and heart. The greater is inside the body. The smaller is outside. Including the body, every object in this world and the world in toto are transitory, evanescent, impermanent. The imperishable is within, which you call I. You started saying I long years back. Even now you continue to say the I. Your body today is not what it was day before yesterday. So many cells have gone and new ones built. So our body is completely transforming moment after moment. As I speak to you, my body is transforming. Cells are disposed of, used. So the imperishable is not in the material or the energial level. The imperishable is above them, inside the body. And the way to access it is Kshamarjavadaya tosha satyam piyushavad bhaja. Be enriched, be empowered, be elevated, be expansive. By cultivating these virtues, by possessing them, just like you can possess things of the world, you can also possess mental and intellectual virtues, enrichments. The entire spirituality works for inner spiritual enrichment, qualitative enrichment. That is what we want. How beautifully he has put it. He never speaks anything more about it. He enters into the subject. What is the subject? Be ready, Baba. Be ready. Be ready. I will give you what is your dimension. That dimension nobody thinks about. Now through Janaka, Ashtavakra is exposing it for one and all. Look, my dear king, Janaka, look. Na prithvi, na jalam, na agni, na vayuhu, Dyaurna va bhavan, Esham sakshinam chidrupam vidhi muktaye. You ask me, katham jnanam avapnodi. How can knowledge be gained? Knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. You know, this interaction with you is a knowledge process. Every word that comes out of my mouth is beaming with knowledge. Every word that you hear is instilling knowledge in you. This is a knowledge interaction, a knowing process that is instituted, pursued, preserved, and incorporated. It's a knowledge process. The whole world. What do you mean by the whole world? You can only say the whole world. Can you not say, find out how this world is consisting of? This world consists of only 5 items. What are the 5 items? We call them Pancha Bhutas. The word Bhuta means that which has come to be. Something has frozen itself into the world. It is just like water getting frozen and becoming ice. It puts on a new color. You can walk over it, build a palace over ice. But in water you cannot. Just like the water transformed into ice, something has transformed into the Panchabhutas. It's a condensation. In the condensation, there is a gradualness. The solid earth, the fluid water, the gaseous air. These are the 3 forms of substance. Then we go to energy, fire, and the ground of all these, sky or space. Tell me, my dear viewers, is there anything besides these 5 in the whole world? Is there anything besides these 5? The solid earth, the fluid water, the gaseous air, the heat and the hot and brilliant fire, and finally, endless space around. And what are you? You are an individual standing anywhere upon the earth, looking at all these. I am standing upon the earth, I am seeing the sea, I am surrounded by air, I also see the fire, then the endless space. All of them are objects before me. Objects before me. And what am I? Am I the earth? No. Am I water? No. No. Then what are you? I only look at it. They are objects. And I am the subject. So the entire world, na Prithvi, you are not the earth. Na Jalam, you are not water. Janaka. Na Agnihi, you are not the fire. Na Vayuhu, you are not the air. Dhyaurnava Bhavan, you are not the space. Then what are you? What shall I say, my dear viewers? I wish I were by your side. Esham Sakshidam, you are the witness of all these. You are the witness of all these. They don't witness you. They are witnessed by you. You are witnessing, seeing. Poor earth doesn't see you. Poor water cannot. Air also, ditto. Fire, not at all. The space, don't speak about it. None of them knows that we are living. They have no means to know also. They don't know that they exist even. They are there. We say that they are. We say that they are. Poor they cannot say. You are the witness. 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 Esham Sakshinam. You only witness them. They are witnessed by you. Can the witnessed become the witness? Are you following me? Can the seen item become the seer? Or the seer is different from the visible and the seen. The I and the you are different. The subject is different from the object. What is this world? Earth is an object, water is an object, air is an object, fire is an object, and sky or space is an object. All are objects. Then where is the subject for them? Anything is said to be an object with reference to the subject. Where is the subject of the Panchabhautik world? Nowhere within the Panchabhutas. It is only in the human individual, inside the body. The body doesn't witness. Body is also an object. The body, an object, is also witnessed by something within your body. That is why you say, I have a body. The earth doesn't say that you are a body, nor does water say. None of them says. We alone say, I have a body and I am surrounded by a world. I have a world around me. So you are Sakshinam, you are the witness. No, not sufficient. I have something more to say. More to say. The entire Panchabhutas constitute the infinite world. And that infinite world you perceive and witness and refer to and describe it as infinite. So who is the witness of the infinite? I. Tell me now. If you are witnessing the infinite world, what is your measure and magnitude? Are you a mustard? Or are you a mountain? Are you the sea? Are you even the space? No. All these are witnessed by me. So the witnessing eye is superior to them in all measures and magnitudes. My dear Janaka, this witness is inside your body, and that is what you refer to as I. Tell me now, what is the thing to be known? This I is to be known. This witness is to be known. Esham sakshinam vidhi. No, the witness of all these. What is that? Atma, the self. You refer to as I am, I am, I am, I am. That amness, that amness does not refer to the body, nor does it refer to the earth or the sky. It refers to something inward in the body, an inner presence. Chidrupam vidhi muktaye. That is called the consciousness. Consciousness. What is consciousness? We cannot define it. It is not material, it is not energial, it is not objective, object also. Then what is this? It is different. That consciousness is a presence by virtue of which one becomes conscious of other things as well as oneself. There is a presence in you called consciousness which makes you feel I am, and which makes you also feel you are, he is, they are, she is, it is. It makes you feel others as well as yourself. That Chidrupa Vidhi Muktaye, for getting liberation, Janaka, know that. Know that. Know that. What? The witness of the Panchabhutas, the witness of the endless world, the witness of the varietal world, the witness of the infinite world. That witness is Chidrupa. It is sentient. It is sentient. It is conscious. It is conscious. It is not matter. It is not energy. It is something entirely different. And you experience it every moment. That is why you are. Chidrupam vidhi muktaye. For liberation, this one factor alone is to be known. This one factor. Don't lay your hands on anything else. This is the only factor you have to lay hands upon in order to know and win liberation. You know, when I read this verse and try to explain it, I feel something like a vaporization, an ethereal feeling. We are not what the world is. We are different from it. Our role is witness. The witness will never become the witnessed. You will never get affected by the world. The world cannot affect you at all because you are its witness. When you are aggrieved, you don't become grief. You are the witness of grief. When you become joyous, you don't become joyful. You are the witness of joyfulness. When you are able to lay hands upon the witness and you are able to realize it, that is what you call blissfulness. You feel the abundance. You feel the sufficiency. You feel the inundation. You feel the effulgence. That is how you become blissful. The other things are pleasure, exhilaration, horripilation, that's all. Na prithvi, na jalam, na agni, na vayur, dyaurna va bhavan, esham sakshinam chidrupam vidhi muktaye. See, tell me whether the sage has answered his question. By the first sloka he said, how dispassion can be cultivated. Now he says, by knowing what, you will be liberated. He has also said, the one thing that you have to know is the knower in you, the witness in you. And all these things are equally witnessed by the eye. So what should be the measure and magnitude of the eye? It has to be greater than what is witnessed. So you are carrying a dimension which is far greater than what you think the world has. Put the world on the one side and your eye on the other. That eye inside you is infinitely greater than the infinite world. Can you dance? Can you jump with joy? This is your measure. This is a fact and you carry it. And you are referring to it. Whenever you say, I, what is this I? People only know to chant the name of God. They first of all have some idea of God. And that God is an idea, their idea. And they chant words which are denoting that. Now, this is a direct understanding that you are the witness of the whole world. The witness is sentient. The Panjabhutas are inert. Everything is insentient. You are the only sentient presence within your body. Know that. It is not reaching it. It is not gaining it. It is not producing it. It is only knowing it, detecting it, discovering it, and realizing it. I shall stop for the day. I wanted to tell you, my dear viewers, actually listening to Ashtavakra Samhita, and especially the text like Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana, on which I speak, don't think that it is a customary or conventional listening. If you are able to tune yourself effortlessly, you don't have to strain. Simply even close your eyes and listen to. The sound vibrations will strike the eardrum, enter your brain, and the idea stimulation will automatically take place. So, it is a kind of infusional introspection that takes place through these discourses. I am setting it for that purpose. It is not a mere listening. The viewers must be able to listen to, means the whole exposure should infiltrate into their mind, get dissolved there. The vibrational dissolution to take place there. It's called infusional introspection. When a teacher talks and the disciple is attuned to his listening, automatically this infusion will take place. So this is an introspection for all of you. It is not the customary or conventional listening. You should listen to with relaxation, without straining your eyes and ears. Automatically the words will enter the eardrum, touch the eardrum, and the transformation will take place. This infusional introspection is a coinage which I have made to drive home the message of the whole process. So this should be a kind of a contemplation and introspection for you. We will continue the theme tomorrow. Throughout the text it is like this. It is directly taking you to merge with your inner expanse. This is the idea. Samvedyavarjitamanuttamamehgamadyam samvitpadam vikalanam kalayan mahatman hrudyeva tishta kalanarahita kriyam tu kurvan akartrapadametya samodita shri kurvan akartrapadametya samodita shri Shri Hari Hari. We shall have a conclusional Omkara. Take your pose for it. Om